Avery suddenly couldn't find Costello and became concerned he may have crashed from his manic episode. On the contrary, she heard the shower fire up and he was full speed ahead. She was still operating with kid gloves. However, thought maybe it was time to exercise some reason into the moment. She subtly barged in on his shower and asked when he last spoke with his mother. Costello answered without concern that he hadn't spoken with her recently. He added the caveat he was sure she would be thrilled to see him and meet Avery. It was as though he was telepathically communicating. His confidence was high. Avery took in a big breath through her nose and came right out with some possibilities. She said there may be the chance his mother wouldn't be prepared for their visit, and maybe they could confirm before they prepare themselves and then drive 90 miles. Just to be sure they don't spend the day driving to her all hopped up like those boys in Swingers, and then drive back home with the opposite gusto. Costello paused his enthusiastic scrubbing and told Avery she had a valid point. He did poke a little bit of fun and comment that she was insinuating they couldn't take a trip to Ojai and still enjoy themselves, even if Mom wasn't capable of hosting them. Costello's mother, Candace Dakota Eldridge, lived in the quaint city of Ojai in Ventura County. In 2016, she was at a claims managers conference where two younger employees mistook her kindness for interest. At a hospitality hosted by her employer, both young men took flirting in the wrong direction and threatened to report to her superior that she was sexually harassing them if she didn't come back to their room. Fortunately, an observant bartender caught on to the con these two were up to and tossed his phone on the bar to record the incident. The conference was hosted in Hawaii with one-party consent. He scratched on a napkin he intended to record the conversation and asked her to acknowledge she consented to the recording. This quick-thinking barkeep was in law school and just happened to have learned this was Hawaii state law, consistent with the federal one-party consent. Candace gave a very convincing affirmative nod and continued to swat off these two ghouls. She filed a sexual harassment case with her company at the first opportunity and was sadly portrayed as an opportunist, rather than treated appropriately as a victim. Candace was, of course, livid, having dedicated over 2 decades to her employer, not to mention the years on the East Coast and multiple relocations, all to garner the same respect men with less time and experience at the job received. When she first reported, she convinced herself the recording by the brilliant bartender wouldn't even be necessary. Sadly, she found out that wasn't the case. All those motivating speeches they gave her and other employees at orientations and training were all smoke and mirrors in the end. She realized everything was a bottom line, so she bottom-lined them right back. Not only did her team of attorneys successfully win her sexual harassment case, they also litigated and helped her be awarded judgment in a discriminatory practices suit. Candace retired early and found herself a beautiful home in Ojai, where she enjoys doing whatever the fuck she wants, while simultaneously supporting Costello's deadbeat dad without the financial pressures she once faced. Costello simply applauded his mother for her tenacity and prudence. He was quite proud of her fearlessness in taking on a sizable company the way she did. He never once asked her for a dime. He knew Pops was there to handle the skimming, so he structured his own means and allowed her to live her life. The only downside was he did minimize their conversations, so she didn't feel obliged to tell him when she would travel, just as she hadn't this week while she was in Norway. Costello rang her cell phone and she transferred the call to FaceTime, where he immediately noticed she was in a dark hotel. "Please don't tell me someone is lying next to you, Mom," Costello said quietly. "No, honey. I'm just in this room tonight and I jump on a cruise in the morning. I wouldn't have answered if I wasn't alone," Candace responded with a smirk. "Gross," Costello spat out. Candace got a good laugh at that. "Well, shit. We were going to come up and visit, maybe grab brunch. I have a lot to talk about and someone I want you to meet, Costello said sadly. We? Do you have a mouse in your pocket? Candace joked. Candace was sharp. She didn't fixate on anything. Most people would have thought maybe he was with Jenna. He did make just about everyone believe she was his one and only. Candace was savvy enough to leave it open and allow him to tell her without speaking any assumptions. Costello made himself very clear. He told her he met someone new, and even that she was an acquaintance of Jenna's. Even though Candace was aware of Costello's time with Jenna, she knew literally nothing of her. Costello kept it to himself whenever they spoke, and she never asked. Candace figured he would open up to her when the time was right. That time never came, and all she ever knew was Jenna existed in his life. She didn't even know a single aspect of the shooting, coma, or her return to Seattle. He felt himself barreling down one of his rambling explanations, so he used the wee hours of Norway to cut the conversation short. He told her to FaceTime him after she settles in on her cruise so he could fill her in on some news, because he may be traveling himself when she returns. Candace expressed her motherly love, and they ended the call. Okay, now what? Costello asked Avery. Avery stared at Costello for a minute and smiled with genuine adoration. You two are adorable, she said in a gleeful grade school tone. Ugh, quit it, Costello replied. He felt the dynamic of his nihilistic bravado transcend into a juvenile helplessness. The hatred was profound. A pride in being this acutely sardonic human was getting pummeled by emotion. Something dark inside him started to wake up and announce a desire to see some light. It was almost as though he was observing the very evolution of his self. Costello peered under his eyelids and embraced the experience. Avery looked over the frame of her glasses and knew exactly what she was witnessing. Costello admitted he was drained from being so manic and now finishing up a deep dive into his psyche. He begged for an afternoon without discussing any of what he just went through and promised to just put a pin in it and return to the conversation later. Avery gave him 2 thumbs up and called out her favorite restaurant. Costello paused for a second and realized his mom didn't say shit about his wee bit of beard growth.